Hello, welcome back to Slaying the Craft, the show where we go inside the mind of a thriller writer. I'm your host, Sabrina Thatcher, an author, podcaster, book coach, but most of all, fan of the genre. I am so excited to introduce my guest today, who is a good friend of mine. Allison Buccola is the author of The Ascent and Catch Her When She Falls. She has a JD from the University of Chicago and lives in the Chicago suburbs with her husband and their two young children. Welcome, Allison.
Yeah, thanks
Yay!
so much for having me on. I'm so excited.
Me too. So full disclosure, Alice and I just got back from a trip together a couple days ago, and it was super fun.
It's
It was great. Got a lot of writing done.
great.
But we were there because you were at Murder by the Book in Houston to talk
hmm
about The Ascent and this amazing new book that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about The Ascent?
Yeah, sure. So The Ascent is psychological suspense. It's about a woman who grew up in a reclusive cult. And one day when she was 12 years old, everyone disappeared. So her mom's gone, her sister's gone, everyone she's ever known is just gone. She doesn't know what happened. The book actually starts 20 years later. She has been trying to build a new life for herself in Philadelphia. She's married, she has a 7-month-old daughter. She's kind of struggling with new motherhood. She's feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of concern about losing her daughter. And then someone shows up at her front door claiming to have answers to her past. And the book kind of takes off from there.
Ooh. Okay, so I will just say, first of all, I'm a huge fan of this book. I was lucky enough to read an early version, and literally I was still like working a full-time job then. I literally just stopped working that day and just read the book. Like it's so good. You have such amazing prose. So I'm just curious, what excites you the most about this story?
Yeah, I really enjoy learning about cults. So having a cult aspect to this book was a lot of fun. But I think the thing that really helped me get into the book the most was the motherhood aspect of it. So Lee is, maybe she's struggling with postpartum anxiety. Maybe it's really just she's experienced this loss before and she's experiencing very real concerns about what might happen to her daughter. So my kids are now 5 and 8, so the like early motherhood days are like kind of far behind me, but
Yeah.
but they're
But you
they're
remember
very
them.
I remember that kind of. I mean, it's all like kind of a fuzzy blur. When I started writing this book, they were like a little bit more recent. But the new motherhood period is just such an intense and such a visceral experience. Like it's a very physical experience. You're in the world, at least for me, in a way that like I wasn't before. Like I was kind of like floating through, and then kids just sort of focus you. And there is so much anxiety that goes along with like, am I doing the right thing? I have this vulnerable infant. Am I taking care of this infant? Is something going to happen? So I think getting to dig into that and explore that was really fun,
Yeah.
and I think it fits well with the psychological suspense genre. So that excited me about the book.
Yeah. Well, and I would have to say, like, as somebody who doesn't have kids, and I think I've said this to you before, like, I actually was like, oh, okay. Like, well, that sucks. So I think you did a really good job of making that feel really tangible. So which idea part of the story came to you first? Was it the cult aspect or was it the motherhood aspect?
Yeah, it was the cult aspect that came first. So one of the early scenes that I had in mind was one of the first chapters in the book where Lee, or Ophelia is her full name, she wakes up, she's in the commune, and she kind of starts going about her day. And she realizes that not everyone's there, but she thinks maybe she missed something. So she thinks there's a meeting going on. There's only about 16, including her, 16 people in this group. So it's possible everyone's like at the meeting house already. Um, and she's kind of wandering the compound, slowly realizing that everything is not okay and
Hmm.
people are not there anymore. So that was an early scene in my
Hmm.
mind, which was kind of a fun scene to start with because I got to be like, okay, well, what kind of group is this? And
Yeah.
like, what does this look like? What are they doing? Like,
Hmm.
they're farming, they're trying to like be self-sustaining. So that's part of what this looks like. And I knew that she was going to be a part of a cult that disappeared. But that's kind of all I knew. So I
Yeah.
started there and then was kind of trying to flesh out, okay, well, who is Ophelia now? And I did go through a couple iterations of Ophelia. She was a lawyer at some point. And then finally she became a mother. And I was like, yes,
That's
that's where
it.
we have to go. Yeah. Yeah.
That is, I mean, it's such an interesting story, and I love that idea of like the first thing you're seeing was that scene, and I think it is very powerful where Ophelia wakes up and she's like totally fine, and then realizing, wait, something's wrong. And that I think is fascinating. And one of the things I think you put into the story, which I found really interesting, was this idea around documentaries and how we use true crime documentaries. And I know that you used a lot of cult documentaries for research. I know that's like one of my favorite ways to do research too. But how did that like take shape for you? Because that's something that kind of triggers a bunch of things that ends up happening in her life, is this idea that a documentary is coming back in to talk specifically about the 15 and that cult experience.
Yeah, I would say I have a fraught relationship with true crime and
Yeah.
documentaries in that I enjoy consuming them, but I think they're not great.
Yeah. It's like this like
And so
double-edged sword of like on one side you're like, yes, I'm so into this. And the other side like, ooh, should I be into this? This is someone's life. Like,
yeah, and it feels very voyeuristic, and it is very voyeuristic.
yeah.
And I mean, the documentary plays a few different roles in the book, and I can't go too much into it because I don't want to spoil
Yeah.
anything later on in the book. But it's not, I would say it has its pros and cons
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the story. And I think that's probably true for true crime in general, where, a lot of times it is bringing attention to cases that might not otherwise get attention. And I think it does play a cathartic role for people, although maybe it also plays the opposite of a cathartic role where it's getting people like revved up about things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think that when I was, so I watched a lot of documentaries and then I was reading some interviews, and I feel like the interviews were probably more helpful because I felt like they were a little less curated.
Yeah.
When you're watching these documentaries, there's like
Oh,
obviously a
there's a
story.
lens, there's an angle.
Yeah. And you're getting people's thoughts, but it's like, I don't know, a lot of them felt edited in a way where I was like, okay, well, this is like a particular cult narrative that you're trying to put forward. And I think that the experience of people in cults is pretty varied. I think that there's a lot of shame around being part of these groups that sometimes doesn't make it into the filmed documentaries. So I don't know. So yeah, so I'm a consumer of documentaries, but I don't know how I feel about that, and I think that ambivalence probably comes through in this book.
Well, yeah, I just appreciated that it was taking from, you were looking at it from the lens of the subject or the potential subject or whatever the case is, within that, around how it impacts the people who are truly actually involved, which I thought was really interesting. So how many drafts did it take you to write this book?
It took, I don't really know. I feel like it's hard to count them after a certain point.
Yeah, true.
And it's also hard to like count. I have a hard time figuring out like, well, what actually counts as this book? So we've talked about this before, but before writing this book, I had another cult story that I was working on. And it had the same character names in it, and it had a cult, but that was like the only thing that these stories had in common. And so I got pretty far in writing that. And then I was having trouble like making it move. I talked to my editor about it. I wasn't under contract yet, but we were just talking about it, and she was like, I don't think so. So I had to,
time to
scratched
regroup.
that story. But still use the cult. And so in that story, like the cult was there and there was a mystery going on in this group. And so then at some point I was like trying to like retool it, and I was like, okay, well, what if the cult's not there? And the story that I want to tell is a lot about loss. It's about losing this kind of group. It's about the grief that goes along with that. So what if it's just like not there and she can't go back? Yeah. And so that's the direction it went in. But like, do you count all the drafts that I was doing before that on this different story as drafts? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know who makes the rules, but the writing police are not here. So I'm going to say you do whatever you want. I will say though, I got to see an early draft of it, and I feel like the version that I saw was like quite polished. So I'm curious about, for you, when you're sharing like with a writing group. So if we have new writers who are like, oh, I'm just joining a writing group, what am I supposed to share or whatever, when to share? How did you know like when is the right time? Like, okay, I'm ready to share this with people to see how things are going, versus like right off the bat. I mean, you may just be like first draft amazing writer. I don't know that, but like, but at what point were you like, okay, I think it's like I'm at a point where I feel comfortable like putting this out for people to give me feedback?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's tempting as a new writer to be like, well, I have this like very vague story idea, and I want people to like help me shape it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just gonna like kind of like put some stuff on a page and then send it out like very early stages. And for me, it's really helpful to have like I don't necessarily need to know like how the whole book is going to come together, but I need to have like a vision of the character. I need to have a vision of like what the plot is, and I need to have pages that I feel like are them like I think that it's like I've done what I can to
Yeah.
make these pages convey that, and then I'm going to see if it's having the effect on the group that I want it to. I think if you submit too early, I mean, if it's like riddled with grammatical errors, I think a problem you'll get in a writing group is they'll be like, "Oh, you need to put a period here." And you're
Yeah.
like, "I know, I just haven't fixed that yet." But that will be the feedback you get. So if you want deeper feedback, you need it to be polished before you submit it. And I think if you submit it before you have kind of a clear idea in mind of where you want this story to go, you're going to be too like you're going to get what other people want as a story, and it's not necessarily going to be
And not
right
your
for you.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the version that you guys saw had probably been, I'd probably like gone through it a few times. Like maybe I'm sure I'd like written it out, printed it out, gone through, marked things up, probably changed around a few scenes and then
Yeah.
sent it. But had been working on the idea for a while before I sent it
Yeah.
out.
I always find it really interesting because everybody's a little bit different with like how much they're willing to show or not show,
Yeah.
like it's just every writer like manages through their process differently. And it's just so fascinating to me how we all are trying to figure out our own way. But then we also know one, writing is an isolating experience, but you have to have people in order to make the book like actually done.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it makes sense that there would just be like different points. Like some people love to talk about the ideas
Yeah.
and they can handle it. And I just like I don't think I could handle that and then like go home and be like, well, now I have this like streamlined idea of what I want to do. So yeah,
Like I have
it's
too
good to know what
many
you can handle.
ideas. So for you, what do you think, what do you want readers to really walk away from like feeling from the Ascent, other than the like amazing, this was such an amazing twist and it's such an amazing book? What was like, what do you want them to walk away feeling?
Yeah, I was hoping that readers would sort of relate to Ophelia and the motherhood aspect of the book, which was sort of a hook to like kind of draw them in, because I think that's a more relatable experience than necessarily like leaving a cult.
Yeah.
I wanted the reader to like kind of think about, so the story is focused on sort of the after effects of having been part of a cult. You do see like some of her life in the cult in the book, but the story that I wanted to really focus on here was a story about like leaving and what that's like and trying to like reintegrate into society, which is hard for a lot of people who have been part of these groups. And it's hard, especially for children who are born into the groups and then don't have these support systems. So I wanted the reader to kind of think about that experience. And then I think sometimes we have this tendency to be like, okay, well, what we're doing is like normal. And what these cults are doing is like fringy and weird.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just pull these people out of these groups, then they'll like be reset back to like normal ideas and normal beliefs and normal norms. And there is no normal. Like
Yep.
we do weird things too. And
Yeah.
like society is culturally constructed and like it has to be learned. And some of the things that we do are not ideal and
Mhm.
are dysfunctional. So I wanted it to be sort of this like she's rejoining society, but it's not an easy transition. And that's not just her. Like she has to learn things, and then some things that she's trying to get herself into are dysfunctional. So I wanted the reader to kind of maybe be grappling with that a little bit during the
Yeah.
book.
Well, and I think it's really interesting because if you're reading, and well, you were reading a lot of cult survivor books, so that is kind of the whole thing of like a lot of times in the memoirs that I've read are about like what their life experience was there, and then like how they were trying to like when they left, what happens, and
Yeah.
it's the that idea that like for Lee, she woke up, everything is gone, everything she ever knew is gone, and now she's trying to figure out, well, at 12 years old was thrust back into society into society for the first time, and really trying to figure out what that looks like. And I find it really interesting because you have like the past and present timelines, and past includes her stuff on the commune, but then also with her aunt and like her family as she's like trying to get integrated in. And I think something I had asked about was like the cousin and how that cousin impacts her experience. And I was just curious, like, what is like when you were picturing her family, her very first like foray back into reality. What kind of conflicts did you want her to have to deal with?
Yeah, I wanted her. So Lee moves in with her aunt and her aunt's family. She's got an aunt and uncle and then two cousins. And she's never met them before because she grew up in this group and her aunt's family was sort of cut off. So she goes to their house. Her aunt is this like warm, welcoming figure who actually does help and support Lee, so it kind of helps her through. But then her cousin, Clara, the older cousin, is really pretty nasty, and is a 12-year-old girl. So
They
maybe
they
she's
do what
like,
they do.
they do what they do. And like maybe she's on the nastier side for a 12-year-old girl, but like being thrust into a group of 12-year-olds when you've never been a part of that before is going to be a rocky experience.
Yeah.
So I wanted Lee's experience when she's getting out to be not so terrible that like you can't make it through it.
Yeah.
So the aunt was important. But I wanted her to kind of learn like, oh, you can't trust the outside society. Like people are out to get you, and I have to kind of hide myself and hide who I am, and hide these things that I learned in the group that I valued, that I experienced. Otherwise, I'm going to have a really rough go of this. So that was sort of her first like experience, like bumping up against the world's expectations and learning that if she doesn't hide herself, then she's going to be in trouble.
And I think it's interesting how that's reflected in her life as a mother, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
she's also then almost like she's trying to mask her anxiety around motherhood while she's trying to connect with other mothers in the story.
Oh yeah, she does not feel like she can share herself.
Yeah. Okay, well, so moving on a little bit, I wanted to ask you about why you decided you wanted to write the dark and twisted. Like, why this genre? Why are you not writing fantasy or the great next American literary novel? Like, why we're writing mystery, suspense, thriller?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy them.
Yeah, that
It's a
helps a
short
lot.
version of the answer. I mean, I enjoy other genres too. So when I started writing, I actually was like, oh, maybe I'll do speculative. And then I started writing a speculative book, and I was like, oh, but I really have this like idea that I want to do for a mystery, and it kept on coming back to me. So I just pivoted to it. I think mysteries are a lot of fun, though, as a writer. I think psychological suspense in particular, you really get to dig into the characters' minds. And I love that. Like, I love developing out a character. Um, I love playing around with their psychology. And so, and you get to do that in psychological suspense. But it's also a puzzle. And so you have to think about, like, well, where am I revealing information? How am I constructing this so that the reader feels pulled along into the story, but also it feels like there's surprises coming up, but it feels like those surprises are fair. I think that sort of working through that puzzle is a lot of fun, and I think there's some aspects of that in all genres, but I think you really clearly get it in the like mystery suspense genre. So
Yeah. So you're just like, I just want to make it as hard as possible for myself. That's
yes.
what I heard. Yeah, I mean, I think that is fair. So when you were saying you were writing speculative fiction, what did that kind of look like? Are you talking about like future or just like near future? What is that like? And do you think you might want to go
near
back to playing
future.
that again?
I think it'd be fun to go back if I had a good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing with speculative near future is you have to have like a really great hook. And
Yeah.
but I won't say what I had because it
Yeah.
was not a great hook, which I didn't realize when I started. But then, like
But
looking
you
back,
never
I'm like,
know.
oh yeah. But yeah, I do. I mean, I think that I read a lot of mysteries. I read a lot of like book club fiction. I like sci-fi kind of stuff, but it's like if it's closer to like present day, like just a tweak on our situation, that's what I really find myself drawn to.
Yeah.
More than the like really built
Like,
out.
yeah,
like,
yeah,
sci-fi.
like you're in the space situation. I think like John Mars does such a great job with that near future speculative fiction. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so if you could teach a new writer one thing, what would it be, and can you teach it to me right now?
Let's see. I mean, I would say if you're a new writer, you just have to make sure that you're actually sitting down and writing. I think that is the most important thing, and I think that's how you actually learn how to write is you have to get words on the page. So the way that I did it for myself was I set myself a goal of 500 words a day, and that was a number for me that felt like I could definitely hit it every day, and it was enough to be making progress. Because I think if you set a number that's too high, then you're not going to hit it. You're going to get discouraged and you're going to stop.
Yeah.
And if you set a number that's too low, then you're not going to make
Just
any progress.
like, wait.
Yeah. But I fall into this trap sometimes too, where like I'm kind of waiting for inspiration to strike, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go do other stuff because I don't know what I'm gonna write right now. And I think that you just like don't learn to write until you actually sit down and do it. And for me, like I don't learn what my ideas are fully until I sit down and I try to get them out on the page. So if you're waiting to know, you're just gonna be waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
And I would also say, if it's okay if I like
Yeah, no.
add on to
Yes,
that
no,
for
I
this
would love for you to continue.
for a new writer, I think for me, I mean, I think people have different ways of learning. So some people learn really well from like craft talks, and some people learn really well from craft books. And I think those can be great. I have some that I really like, but I learn the best from just like hands-on experience joining a critique group. So I joined a critique group early on. And when you're submitting your pages and reading other people's pages, you really get a sense quickly of like what's not working in other people's pages, which is nice. You can be like, oh, it's really annoying me that like this is happening in this story. And then you can look back at your own pages and you can be like, oh, well, I'm doing the exact same
like,
thing.
oh, I want to change that.
Yeah. And I think like writing is just such a practical craft that if you're not sitting down and doing it and like doing the work and then looking at like the particular words that you have on the page and trying to figure out how to make those better, I think it's going to be really hard to learn, or at least for me. Like I'm a hands-on writer, so.
No, I agree with you, and I think that the practical part really makes a lot of sense. Like this is a practical art, but how did you also when you went in and you were like, okay, I'm going to start sharing in this critique group that you were in, sharing those pages. There is art, and then there's a technical aspect of the craft, but then there's also the personal aspect. Like you're kind of, it's the letting yourself be on the page, and you're like opening up your vulnerability of, I created this, what do you think? And how do you like manage through that? And maybe you don't have the anxiety, but I have anxiety when I like send people my pages. So how did you manage through like that and being okay with, okay, whatever's going to come back is what's going to come back, and like I am going to be open to it?
Yeah, I think so. I was a lawyer before I was a writer.
Well, that helps a lot. I'm sure you got a lot of critiques.
A lot of critiques. And like lawyers it's funny like looking at the two different worlds, and just like the different kinds of emails that you get in the different worlds. Because like as a lawyer, people are just like, no,
just
wrong.
Straight.
Do this again. Yeah, and if you get like an okay, find a file, like that's good. That means it's good. And like no one is going to be putting lots of exclamation marks in their emails to you. Be like, great job! I just oh genius! This is so great. It's not like that. And then you go and like switch over to the writing world and you're like, oh man, I better add like a lot more exclamation marks that feels natural, and like and you know
like,
that like
so
on
I'm
the
not
other
too
side
mean.
yeah, and I was like, love it, so good. So it's just like so lawyers are harsh.
Okay.
But I think that so I had a lot of practice. I think that just getting practice, like sending your stuff out and having someone rip it apart helps. But I think also for me, I think that like having been part of that world before, one thing that I learned is that if people are really, I mean, some people are assholes. So some people just rip you apart because they want to feel better about themselves. But a lot of times, if you find someone who's like a valuable critique partner, if they're really ripping into you or like really giving you detailed feedback, it's because they see something in your writing that they want to like bring out, and they're excited about it. They're spending their time on it. And so I think that thinking about critique as a form of respect is a really helpful way to like sort of orient yourself. So you're like, okay, well, they're not like, they don't just hate this. They're telling me a lot because they like it or they like something in it. And I think that sometimes the most offensive thing for me would be to get like nothing. If someone's just like, yeah, it's good, liked this, so here's like a few little things, then it means like they might not really be engaged. I mean, it could mean it's fine.
Yeah.
But it might also mean like, well, they don't want to hurt your feelings, but they don't see how to fix this.
Yeah.
So like, so I think that like, if you think about it as someone like engaging with you as a peer and engaging with you as a real writer and knowing that you want to like have this feedback to make your story better, so they're giving you this feedback, I think that like if you can get yourself into that mindset, I think it's a really helpful mindset to be in.
I think so too. That's so smart. And it really makes a lot of sense because that is what the whole point of a critique group is. And I do think about this for new writers because when you first go in, it's like, oh, you don't know, you want to take everyone's feedback. And I say this
Yeah.
to like my clients constantly. You are the authority of your story. You are the authority of your story. Like be discerning when you have feedback. But I do think it is valuable to remember that for the most part, what you're getting is feedback it is intended to be making your story better, right? That's what we
Yeah.
all want, is the best story. And so one of the things that I always like to learn about is what tools people use while they're writing. And I know that you use Story Genius,
I
and
did.
I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I don't use a whole ton of craft books, but I love Story Genius. That's my like one craft book that I
Well,
always
I
go
remember
to.
you being like, "Oh, there's a tree went through my house, and the only thing I cared about was grabbing storage." Yes, I was like,
Oh yeah.
"Girl."
Yeah, I used to have this like writing barn and Sabrina's right, like a tree fell on it and it was like it knocked out like part of the like stairs to get up there because my like writing studio was on the second floor. And so I didn't even know. I was like, there might be holes up there. I was like, Vince, go jump over the tree, bring my computers up there or my charger or something, and Story Genius. You need to get them both
The only
down.
things that
Don't
matter.
die. Yeah, so I have Sabrina mentioned that this might come up, so I have it right here if anyone is
Yes.
interested. This is Story Genius. I think it's great. I think one of the there's a bunch of activities in the book and a bunch of exercises that you can do to work through. So I think it's really valuable to get the book and to work through it yourself. But one of the main ideas of the book that really resonated with me is I feel like you hear a lot about, making sure that you have an internal and an external conflict in your
Mm-hmm.
book, which is right and it's good. But the way that Story Genius talks about the internal conflict is as like the main character's misbelief that they're operating off of, which is a
Mm-hmm.
really helpful framing for me. So the idea is that your main character has at some point in their life developed certain kinds of ideas or beliefs about the world that helped them through something traumatic or hard in their childhood or in their early adulthood or whenever, but now is hindering them in some way. So
Okay.
like if someone was betrayed before, and then they like kind of put up walls around themselves and their belief is that like, well, if I don't let people get to me, then like they can't hurt me
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be happier this way. That's a belief that might have served them well in the past but is no longer helping them and is in fact an obstacle. Um, and I think we're Sabrina, you look
Yeah.
frozen to
Oh,
me.
I'm still here. I think we're still recording. My internet's doing weird things, but I'm here.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay. um so kind of thinking about the character in that way, not just as like, oh, an internal conflict, but kind of thinking about like, well, where did this conflict come from? What's this like articulable belief that the character has that might be helpful in some situations, but sort of applied broadly? uh,
No.
let's see. Let me see.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
it looked like it didn't stop recording, so
Okay.
excellent.
Well, I did stop talking.
Okay, that's totally fine. No, totally okay. I also just screamed into the mic, so don't worry. It'll be editable
Okay.
editing. I'm so sorry.
No,
Oh, I
no
cannot wait
problem.
to move away from this stupid place.
Yeah, it's such an annoying problem.
It is so annoying. I can't even do my job. Okay, anyway.
Oh no.
Anywho, going back to you
Oh
were
yeah.
saying Story Genius and about the internal motivations.
Yeah. So thinking about this misbelief of the character, I like thinking about the misbelief or the internal conflict of the character as this like articulable uh Sorry.
No,
Trying to
you're fine.
remember
You're
where I
fine.
was and where I left off. Okay, so uh, where
It's
was
something that you
I?
can easily say, like, this is what
Oh yeah.
the
So you
misbelief is,
can
and then what the challenge is going to be, right? Or
Okay, yeah. So I like thinking about the internal conflict, not just like as a conflict in general, but something where it's like, oh, this is the character's idea about the world that's false and that needs to be changed. So it's a really information based and belief system based way of thinking about conflict. And I think that's a helpful way of thinking about it for me. And then the other thing that Story Genius really emphasizes is taking that misbelief and then making sure it's really coming into conflict with whatever your external conflict is. So your external conflicts can be as big as you want it to be, but if it's not bumping up against the problem that your main character has, it's not going to be a compelling story. So you
yeah.
want to make sure that those two things are intersecting, and you want to be kind of going back and checking and making sure, okay, well, are these things hitting up against each other? And is the character kind of like moving towards learning and moving towards moving past their misbelief and correcting that
Yeah.
information?
No, I think that that really makes sense because it is like they're carrying this ideal with them, whatever the external stimuli is that's causing the story, right? Or is
Mm-hmm.
causing them to have to change. And that's
Yeah.
like the big thing is where do they have to change?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the characters you have in the Ascent are really well fleshed out there. They feel very real, especially Lee. So, where in the process are you working on creating character or figuring out what is that internal conflict and how are they going to how do they have to change? Are you doing that as you're writing? Do you do it before? Like, do you have a character guide? Like, where in your process are you figuring out character?
Yeah, so I do like starting out with Story Genius and doing those exercises and kind of getting a sense of, oh, well, who is my character in conflict? And I
Hmm.
start out with like a vague idea of a character and some kind of conflict that they're in,
Yeah.
and then can use that to flesh it out more. For me, I don't feel like I fully know a character until I've written a bunch of scenes, including that character, thrown out a bunch of scenes, and then finally kind of start to cobble it together. But I do like to do those exercises, write out the character, and then kind of do a gut check. Like, am I putting this character in the right kind of situation? Does their psychology make sense? Am I trying to bend their psychology to fit this plot in a way that doesn't feel natural?
Yeah.
Um, so I have to like kind of check myself on that through the writing
That's
process.
interesting. So how do you do that? So as somebody who is very like, I'm a plot girly, I talk about it all the time. And
Mhm.
so, when you have this plot and then you've got your characters and you're working with your characters and suddenly they're like, no, we're not doing that, we're going this other way, like how are you discerning that that's the correct way to go versus what you may have already had in plot, or like that you're trying to push them into this square or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's a for me it's a really messy process. It's tricky to
Okay.
figure
It
out.
is, that's good, it's good
Um,
to know, everyone, it's super messy.
Yeah. And for me, sometimes it means that I need to change the plot. So usually I can tell that something's going wrong because I'm trying to write out a scene and it's really hard to write. And at some point in writing that scene, I'll be like, oh, this is hard to write because this character, it doesn't make any sense for this character to be doing this thing. And so it feels really flat because why would the character respond in this way? The character has never responded this way before. It
Hmm.
doesn't make sense with her psychology. It just doesn't fit. And sometimes that fix can be letting the plot go in a different direction. And so for the Ascent, I know I had like a few big plot changes that I made while I was writing. Sometimes that change can be changing the character, and especially in early stages of a book, if you're like, oh, well, this character doesn't fit. I really do like this plot, but this character's personality isn't the right personality or it isn't the right background to really bring out what I want this plot to be. I guess I had that in
Hmm.
the Ascent too, where I was like
Yeah.
starting with Lee having different like life experiences, and then one of them finally worked for
Yeah.
where I wanted the plot to go. And sometimes it can be in this one that I'm working on right now. I had started out with a main character, and I was like, this main character feels just like all over the place. Like she's really, she's really got like multiple personalities. And I was like, oh, it's because like she needs to be two characters. She's two sisters, and then they can be kind of
Oh,
warring this out with each other. But like
versus
they
one
both,
character internally warring out the exact same thing. That gives
yeah,
it such a deeper dynamic too.
it's been fun. I writing two sisters has been really fun. And sometimes you can get away with having, I mean, like characters are complicated, and so they can be at war with themselves a little. but you want to make sure that like, I feel like it's if you're writing a character on the page, you want the reader to be able to come away with a sense of like who this character is and what's
Mhm.
driving them. And if you make them too complex, sometimes
Yeah.
that's just shorthand for like making them do whatever you want to like fit a situation, or making them
Yeah.
sort of unintelligible on the page. So yeah, splitting into two characters is helpful here, I think. We'll see where it goes. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's really fascinating. And I think it's interesting that it was a discerning thing that you were looking at. This isn't working. Why isn't this working? Why does this feel wrong? And then
mhm.
just trying different things. And I think that's the key too, is in order to complete getting through the process, it is messy. So you do have to try different things. And especially, and we've kind of chatted about this a little bit, but especially in your first books, especially then, you're still trying to figure out, well, what is your process? How do you know if this is what's working versus what is like it's just me, or it's the story, or what of that? There's a lot of navigating that has to be done and discerning. And I think I'm just saying this mostly for myself, like this is okay, it's normal. It's normal.
Very normal. Yeah.
Oh
And
my
I think
gosh.
you do want to, I mean, like I'm saying, like you have to make changes. Sometimes you have to be willing to pivot, but you do have to give yourself enough time to like really sit with it and be like, is this a big change that I need to make? Am I just trying to like move in a different direction because I got bored of this direction, or like
Yeah.
I, and it's hard. It's really hard to figure out what situation you're
And not being impulsive, right?
Yes.
Like, is that what's happening here? I just feel like I need it
Yeah.
more. Okay, so I'm gonna go on to this section is rapid fire questions.
Okay.
These are questions we're asking all of the authors that are joining us. So let's just get into it. So
Yeah.
first of all, what is on your desk?
On my desk, like around me right now,
Yeah, like
a
when you
lot
write,
of
what's on your
trash.
desk? Mine too.
Yeah, I've got my tea right here, but also like teas from like the last couple days, and paper, and then I like have like this like school supply thing that shouldn't be here. And yeah, I it's really nice. This screen is just like my face.
So you're not one like you. Some people are like, my desk has to be super clean, and some people are like, I have to have all my happy things, and it's just like whatever works for
I just
you.
gotta zone out and ignore
Just
the mess.
okay. So what ritual, if any, do you have before or after you write?
It's funny. I used to have more rituals along with writing. So when I started writing the first book, I was writing during nap times. I would put Rhodes down for his nap, and then I would get my Duolingo in. My Duolingo is like my like focus. You're like not parenting anymore. You're doing something else. And then I would write. Now it's easier for me to jump right into it. And I think it's also just because I have like more time. So I'm like dropping the kids off at school. I have the car ride back to kind of be thinking about like what I want to be writing. And then I can do it. But I think if you're like trying to like rapid fire switch from one thing to another, it's nice to have a
Some sort
ritual.
of buffer. What
Yeah.
language are you learning?
Italian. And I got
Oh,
pretty good at it, but now I haven't done it in a long time. So now I just don't,
so
I
now
don't
it's
even
gone.
anymore.
This is
Now it's
what
gone.
happens. It's like in and then it's gone.
Yeah. But it did help write the book. So that was good.
That's fantastic. If you are writing multiple POV or multiple timeline, do you write straight through like as a reader would read it, or do you write each section as a whole for the character voice, like directly through and then interweave?
Um, Yeah, I jump back and forth. So I think if I try to like jump back and forth, like, oh, present tense, and now my next chapter is past, or not, present section, past section.
Yeah.
If I try to go back and forth, then I'll be making those chapters respond more to each other
Hmm.
than respond to the like timeline that they're in. It won't feel as cohesive.
Yeah.
So I'll do chunks where
Hmm.
I'm writing past tense for like, or past, sorry, I keep on saying past tense.
Yeah.
I'll be writing my past scenes for like a week or so, and then I'll switch back. So that way I can make sure they're responding to each other, but not responding in a way that's like unnatural.
Yeah. No, I think that really makes sense too. Especially with multi-timeline, like in the what I'm working on right now, I have a timeline. I wrote it all the way straight through because I was like, well, I don't even know what happened to
Yeah.
the person to know
Hmm.
what the mystery is that has to get solved. Like, so that's what in my mind, I'm just like, I think it's so fascinating. And I find it so admirable when people can do that, like back and forth. And so
Oh,
many
it's so
writers do it
impressive.
that way. It's
Yeah.
really impressive. But yeah, my brain just does not.
I wonder if it's I wonder if it's more outliners who can do it that way.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder, because are you say you're a pantser more than,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Probably because then they're like, I know what's gonna like happen
Yeah.
versus like, well, I don't know. Why is she like this? Let's go see what happened in the past. And then it's like,
Yes.
oh great. No, that happened. So she wouldn't really have
Oh,
done that. So
yep.
eh. Um, okay, so what is the most bullshit piece of advice you've heard?
I don't know if it's a bullshit piece of advice, but it's something that like really annoyed me and messed with me psychologically a little bit.
Okay.
When my first book came out, I had someone comment and they were like, just remember you're only as good as your next one. And it's like true. It was like and it was basically like a like get back in the chair and keep writing thing, I think it was intended as.
I
And
don't
like,
like that.
no, and you do need to keep
I
going.
don't like that. That's not a very
No, but
nice
it's
way to
so
say
hard.
that.
Yeah. It's there like in publishing, there's so many lows and there's like these very few points of highs. So when you're in a moment where you're like celebrating something, like enjoy it and celebrate it and don't constantly be worried about the next thing will come and there will be things to worry about and lows again. But like I don't know, you can enjoy having a book out in the world without being like, okay, but like now I've got to go work on my next
Yeah.
one.
Be like a present and enjoy that
Yes.
moment. I mean,
Yes.
it's amazing. I think I've said this, because I'm in the pre-agent stage. Like it's
Mhm.
so precious to be in this stage because you have all of the hopes and stuff. You should just
Yeah.
enjoy every moment because there's a lot of really hard shit that's
Yes.
coming.
Correct.
A lot of really hard stuff. So you should be, I mean, what is it like? Majority, I don't remember what the statistics are, but most people don't even finish a book that say that they want to. And that most people don't even get an agent that they try to get an agent. Most people don't get a publishing deal. Like, so by the time you get to that point, like that is something that you be proud of. Like
Yeah.
not everyone and a lot of not everyone's are
Yeah.
able
And it's
to,
so I
to
mean,
go
it's
through
just
that.
so easy to like look ahead at the people who are getting things that you're not. So you just have
Mhm.
to be like, wait, like I wrote a book.
Yep.
Whether or not like it gets into the world, like that's a huge
You did it.
accomplishment.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I think like, yeah, taking the time to really like step back and look at where you were 6 months ago and then see
Mhm.
what you've done. Like, I think that's huge, but it's hard to remember to do. But I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that it helps to like focus on.
Keep your eyes on your own paper.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the darkest idea you've had that has scared you about yourself?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I have like a particular one. It's actually kind of funny. I did an interview, right? Like one of my events for the Ascent. Um, I was the person who was interviewing me, who's great, who's one of my old law professors. He's also written thrillers and he's awesome. But he was talking about one scene in the Ascent and he was like, this scene like troubled me that you wrote this scene. And I was like, I like didn't even think that one was that bad. I don't know. But I think that like the dark, like thrillers are really dark. And so it's not something that's troubled me as a person, but I think writing The Ascent, which is about like it's got some like dark motherhood aspects in it. So writing that and then like having to like turn that off and then go like pick up my kids and not be like in an anxious state of mind myself. Um, was like I think that was like one of the big crossovers between like oh just the book world so like everyone can die and these terrible things can
Yes.
happen to like oh yeah this does like have overflow into my real life and so I need to make sure I'm getting myself like out of Lee's head
Yeah.
and back into my own like mom head.
Yeah. Oh my God. I bet that was probably such a hard switch because I know that sometimes like when you're like really into the story, it can be a little bit jarring to like try to come out of that and like go
Yeah.
back to real life. I can only imagine when you're like, okay, now I've got to go be I got to be mom, but
Yeah.
not Lee mom.
Yeah.
Ah. Um,
Yeah.
okay, what part of the process is your favorite?
I like the revising, not the like nitty gritty copy edits kind of stuff, but the like middle of the book revising. I get really anxious coming up with the idea for the book. I find that hard, and I find it stressful, like not knowing through the first draft, like is this all going to come together? Is it going to work? Is this going to be a book at the end? So once I have like a first draft and I have characters and I have a plot that I know like can come together in some way, I think it's so much fun to then go back and like and like big revisions.
Yeah.
But just to be kind of working in a world that's already been built and working with characters that have an internal logic and trying to make it better. I think that's a really fun part of the process.
Yeah. No, I think that definitely makes sense because then you're not trying to do it on the fly. Like that's the
Yes.
you're doing it on the fly. That's rough. Which goes to my next question, which is what part of the process is your least favorite?
Yeah, I think it's the early stages. Like starting from, it's really scary to like just start again. And I think it's also one thing that I hadn't been expecting was the difficulty in transitioning from like a finished book where you have this whole world, you have it worked out, you know it comes together, and then you switch and you're like, oh wait, I have to start this all over again.
Brand new
Um,
world, brand new people, brand new everything, huh?
yeah, and you're
Yeah.
comparing everything that you've written to this like final polished finished project. And it's really hard to remember like, oh no, this that project felt like this too. And it came together eventually. And like, yeah, everything I'm writing right now is terrible, but it'll get cleaned up and it'll be fine.
You just have
And
to
it'll
have
come
faith.
together.
It's having that faith of like it's
Yes.
gonna get there. But that
Yeah.
is, I think it also goes to you have to have a lot of faith in yourself,
I
right?
think that's right.
And belief in yourself that you're going to do that in order to get over the perfectionism of that first draft.
Yes.
Yeah, working out stuff in therapy here on the podcast, y'all. Okay. And what is your old school favorite mystery or thriller? Like if you were in high school, college, and you were like picking up thrillers, what were you reading?
Agatha Christie was like my like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
young person entry into mysteries. So that would probably be my classic. I don't know that I like in college and like early adulthood, I think I moved away from mysteries and then I kind of came back.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then I was like a Nancy Drew fanatic when I was
Oh.
younger.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my, I guess that was actually probably my starting point for
Yeah.
mysteries.
Yeah. It's a great starting point. She's a classic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Allison. Where can people find you if they want to know about you or the Ascent?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, Allison Buccola, and I have my website is AllisonBuccola.com. It has information about like upcoming events and that kind of stuff on it.
Awesome. And listeners, you can find me on Instagram at Sabrina Thatcher Author. If you want more information about my book coaching services, you can find that at crimeandquill.com. Until next time, stay sharp and write twisted. Bye.